Seeking the ultimate top in Bitcoin. Now, this may be a little bit of a controversial video. I actually don't think it'll be that controversial, but I wanted to talk a little bit about what the possible ultimate top could be for Bitcoin. And when I say ultimate top, I mean the actual top, the very utmost price that we can ever get for Bitcoin, and what that could actually be. Because there's a lot of different theories behind Bitcoin. There's a lot of economists who have their own ideas about trying to price this asset in. And some people try and use hash power. Some people try and use things like market adoption in terms of transactions per day and all these different things. But none of them really have been able to calculate what an actual, or calculate with certainty or with any kind of near certainty what the actual asset of Bitcoin, the price of the asset would be in the future. So, now I'm not an economist. I will just say that right away. I think anyone who watches my videos knows I'm not an economist because I actually have more than 100 IQ. But I do have my own kind of ideas on what an ultimate top could be for Bitcoin if such a thing could even exist. So in 2017, when I was a lot newer to crypto, I made my own prediction on Bitcoin. We had just broken above 1,000 USD, and it was a time when when the previous bear market was essentially broken. We had reached these all-time high levels for Bitcoin. Bitcoin had never before been at such a high valuation. And so there were a lot of questions going around about what the possible price discovery was going to take place, what Bitcoin was going to be looking like in a year from now, what the price was going to be, what the ecosystem was going to look like. And so I had made my own personal prediction after we broke $1,000. Most people were saying something like, oh, it could go to 2,000, it could go to 2,500. And I was a lot more bold with my prediction. And I said, I think we're probably going to hit $5,000 in 2017. By December 2017, we're going to hit $5,000. And I was completely wrong. We ended up hitting $5,000 around later that year, I think around August-ish. And by the end of the year, by December, we had gone 4 times above what I had initially thought of as the actual top of this asset. So we went to $20,000 for the end of that run. So completely wrong. But despite that, I made a really bullish estimate, and I was completely wrong. That said, taking that information from 2017, I decided to make my goals for 2018 a lot higher. So for 2018, you guys will laugh at this. My goal for Bitcoin, or my prediction for Bitcoin, was something like, I think I put a tweet out that said something around to the likes of, I think 50K is a safe play, but we are almost certain. But I will be bold and say that we're going to hit 100K in 2018. So if I can find that tweet, I'll post it. It's a good tweet. Just search for 50K is certain, I think was what I said. But that was January 2018. Diluted, right? But only in retrospect and in hindsight. It was diluted to say that we would ever hit $5,000 when we were at 1,000, right? So, but we ended up going to 20. So from 20 to 100, it really didn't seem like that much of a stretch after we had already gone up 20x. What was one more 4x? It really wasn't that much, or 5x. So, at least in terms of percentage returns. But it did bridge an interesting question, which is about looking for that ultimate top. Obviously, I think most people who are in crypto now, if you're watching this video, you're probably not a hype beast. You're probably not someone who is here just for the money. You're probably here because you have a basic understanding of the fundamentals and the technology. And you do think that while, yes, you might be here for the money, you are also here on a level of understanding that your average speculator doesn't have. That you are here because you do understand that Bitcoin is probably almost certainly going to reach that $20,000 mark again. And then once that happens, it's going to continue going, and who knows where it's going to end up. But in general, I'm going to just approach this from a scientific perspective. If we follow the laws of thermodynamics, what goes up must come down, conservation of energy, all of these things. To say that Bitcoin is just going to keep going up forever, I think is a little bit silly. You can't toss a ball up in the air and expect it to go up forever. There's gravity. The gravity affects it over time. It'll eventually reach that zenith, and then it'll start falling. Just like every other asset in the history of anything. Even look at Amazon, one of the most successful Actually, I think it is the most successful company we've ever seen, grown from basically nothing inside of one man's garage basement into the titan that it is today, worth however many, I think 140 billion dollars, something like that. And so even Amazon, you look at the price chart for Amazon, it looks like we've hit that top, and it looks like we're going to be headed down pretty damn soon. Actually, no, it's a lot more than 140 billion. I was only thinking of Jeff Bezos' net worth. I think it's something like easily over $1 trillion, the value of Amazon. So, but even Amazon, as powerful as and valuable as that company is, what goes up must come down, and it looks like Amazon is definitely starting to come back down from that zenith, from that height, from that supremacy. So I think if we follow those basic laws of physics, Bitcoin is certainly going to be hitting some kind of top. It will hit a top. It will hit a level that it will basically never hit again, that it will be that point, and then it'll start coming down. And I think historically that holds true, because you look at any other asset in the history of man. Again, I've used Amazon as a good example, but you can look at gold, you can look at silver, you can look at the S&P, you look at anything. It does hit a top. Well, the S&P maybe not yet, but eventually we will certainly hit a top on that too. The only reason we don't hit a top on a long-term scale is because more humans are alive and then thus produce more value. But if it was a closed system, certainly the S&P would also fall. But the question is where? How do you value an asset like Bitcoin? How do you decide what the ultimate top is? How do you make the distinction between $20,000 is overvalued and $100,000 is overvalued, or $1 million is overvalued? It's hard to say. So again, most people who are in crypto nowadays, who have been through the bear market, who are holding Bitcoin, they do believe, almost everyone, the consensus is Bitcoin is going to hit $50,000 minimum. And the boldest of predictions, if you're John McAfee, you're placing Bitcoin at $1 million, or you're going to eat your own dick on television, which is funny. I almost hope Bitcoin doesn't hit $1 million just to see that. But some of the bold predictions by people like McAfee say Bitcoin is going to be at $1 million. Some people say even higher than that. Some people do have that S&P mindset where Bitcoin is just going to go up forever. But I would say in general, most of this is pretty abstract. Most of these predictions are not really based on anything fundamental. Most of these predictions are based on feeling. They're based on gut. They're based on the perception of what the Bitcoin value should be rather than what it actually is. And as we know, two completely different things exist in the world. One is what we believe should be for a thing, and then there's also what actually is. And this is a very important distinction to make, because people oftentimes, when it comes to their life, they will fight against reality. They will fight to impose their own will on things, because well, things should be like this, so I'm gonna live my life as if things should be like this. But the reality is completely different. The reality is itself. And so I'll never forget this. Rather, one of my mentors always told me this story, that it was, or this almost like a proverb really, is that over time, reality will impose itself upon you. So you can fight against that gravity, against that inertia all you want, and you may even win out in the short term, but in the long term, reality will impose itself upon you. And so I feel like people who believe, or who have this perception that Bitcoin is going to be $50,000, $100,000, $1 million, really for no other reason than it should. I mean, there's nothing, I wouldn't say I would put any kind of faith in that. However, let's look a little bit more at the fundamentals in as much as we can. In general, as Bitcoin price rises, so does the confidence of its holders. And you can see this time and time again on Twitter, especially. As Bitcoin price goes up, you will actually find less and less holders, or less and less sellers of people, or people who have bought this asset early and are holding and are looking to sell. Bruce Fenton is a great example. He was one of the early people who bought into Bitcoin, and obviously as the Bitcoin price went up, you would expect someone like him who made as much money as he did on Bitcoin to actually sell. But the thing is as the price goes up, his faith was actually strengthened more, because people like Fenton have this certain mentality where Bitcoin has to, as it gains value, it gains power, it gains strength. And so you have even less incentive to sell and more incentive to hold, because you can be sure that it's going to continue appreciating. So this is one of the interesting things about Bitcoin. It's not like gold. It's not like many other stocks where it's buy low, sell high, like it is for most traders. Most traders will buy low, sell high. But most holders of Bitcoin will buy, hold, and then they'll hold even tighter, and they'll hold even tighter, and then they'll just have this grip upon their Bitcoin, and they will never sell. And that's just the end of the story. That no matter what, no matter if they're on their deathbed, they will not sell this asset, and that's just what they have decided. So it's really something quite phenomenal, and something we've never really seen, I don't think, really ever in the history of any kind of asset. Sure, we may have one or two individuals who values a stock so highly, but to have a lot of people like that, a lot of holders like that who really believe in the asset to such an extent, I think Bitcoin is really one of the only ones. So it's very rare in that aspect. So certainly it could be possible that there's no top, and it does have that S&P effect. Another thing I will say is that bad money is always spent before good money. So if I give you 10 euros, and then I also give you 10 euro equivalent in Venezuelan bolivars, I believe it's bolivars, yeah, I think it's bolivars. I'll say Venezuelan dollars. If I give you 10 Venezuelan dollars, or 10 euro equivalent, so you have like this huge wheelbarrow of Venezuelan dollars, you would actually rather spend the Venezuelan dollars before you spend your euros. Why is that? Because you know for a fact that the Venezuelan dollars over time are going to be worth less and less, while your euros, even though they may also be worth less and less over time, the fall off is not going to be nearly as steep as it is going to be for the Venezuelan dollars. So you're always going to spend the worst money, the bad money, before you spend the good money. And so the phrase is bad money drives good money out. So if you have Bitcoin and you have USD and you have euros and you have assets, you will first you'll spend your USD, you'll spend your liquid cash because that has the most risk and liability to go down. Then you'll spend your euros or your euros and dollars, they're interchangeable. And then maybe you'll actually have this interesting conundrum where you have your Bitcoin and you have your assets, like you have a house or a land or something, and you may actually choose to sell your land and utilize your land before you sell your Bitcoin, depending on how you feel about your Bitcoin, which is really interesting. But the point is, all of this money is going to be spent, but Bitcoin is never going to be spent because Bitcoin is the best form of currency. The way that I look at it is we have things like land, we have assets like businesses, we have houses, we have real estate, we have commodities like gold and things like that. In general, the universe is so large that we have almost unlimited amounts of everything once we discover things like, or once we can manage to do things like asteroid mining and all of these type of inventions. That once we become a civilization, a spacefaring civilization, this is all theoretical, but once we become a spacefaring civilization, you could say, technically, that Bitcoin is actually the most scarce resource in the universe. It's backed on math, it's backed on the fundamentals of mathematics, uses mathematical primitives to resolve the hash functions, and because of that, you will never be able to find more Bitcoin on Mars. You'll never be able to go to a different planet or a different galaxy and find new Bitcoin because it exists as a mathematical construct. It's this abstract thing. And so even though we may be able to discover new lands and new planets that have these extremely rare chemicals and extremely valuable things on them, we will never be able to go to a new planet and discover Bitcoin. So Bitcoin truly is the most scarce resource in the universe in this sense. And so because of that, you could also say that Bitcoin is the most perfect form of good money compared to all other forms of good money. And so would you ever spend the most perfect form of good money when you could spend any other form of money and have it be more liable to depreciation of value? That's an interesting question. Now, that's really a question only you as an individual can answer. Again, we're not a spacefaring civilization. We live in 2019. We're not living in the year 3000. We have no idea of the ramifications of this kind of thing. But certainly you can make the theoretical argument that even today on this planet that we live in, on this rock, what is the best form of money? What is the best, most scarce form of currency? You could possibly say that Bitcoin is one of them, just due to the aspects that I mentioned previously. So the other thing is, fundamentally, In my opinion, there's really no reason for Bitcoin to be valued at $5,000. There's no intrinsic reason for it to be valued at $10,000. There's no intrinsic reason for it to stop at any particular price point. Doesn't really need to stop at $50,000. Doesn't really need to stop at $100,000 or even $1 million. There's no particular reason why it has to stop at any particular value. Why is that? Bitcoin is mostly because first it's this abstract thing, and secondly, the way that it's priced has a lot less to do with manipulation, and even supply really is not that relevant, even though the supply is relevant from a theoretical perspective, but it's not too relevant as far as the market itself is concerned. When you buy a Bitcoin on the market, you're not really taking into account all of the factors of how much supply is in it. It's really based on faith. Really is based on faith. And the faith, if you have faith in Bitcoin being worth $1 million like many holders do, or being worth $10 million, or being worth an infinite amount of money, expanding in accordance to the amount of global GDP, you could certainly make the argument that Bitcoin could certainly never, ever reach its top. This video was sponsored by Cryptowatch. Are you a crypto degen? Do you spend countless hours in front of your PC babysitting your leverage trades? Well, babysit no longer. With Cryptowatch, you can spend countless hours in the comforts of your own bed, waiting for those SMS alerts. Track how wrecked your portfolio is that week with their portfolio tracker. And you can also check the price of your favorite shitcoins. If you'd like to join Cryptowatch, there's a link in the description below. Happy trading!